So I want to go back to the corrupt impeachment of Trump. If you remember, this was all over the idea that Trump wanted to investigate whether or not there was this corruption in this gas company, Burisma, and whether Joe Biden's quid pro quo to force a prosecutor to be fired was illegal. And for that, he was impeached because the Democrats set the rules that they're allowed to be corrupt. If you want to investigate their corruption, then you have to go to jail or be impeached, etc. Now, one of the things that occurred with this was people, even though we had audio of Joe Biden admitting, yes, I did a quid pro quo. We told the Ukrainian president, unless you fire this prosecutor, we won't give you this $1 billion. We'll walk away. People said, oh, no, Joe Biden was mistaken, or he was lying when he said that in front of the CFR. Well, now, as of yesterday, we have actual audio from Joe Biden talking to the president of the Ukraine, where he's admitting that this was a quid pro quo. Now, one of the things I want to focus on here is I don't see people in the national media or anywhere for that matter talking about how this confirms the statement and testimony of the fire prosecutor Shokin, who released a sworn testimony under penalty of perjury discussing that he was forced to voluntarily resign, that the reason was he was investigating Burisma and Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden. And this was all for the personal interest of Joe Biden. People said, oh, Shokin's a liar. This testimony is garbage. But as these audio proves, he was right about him being forced to resign. He was right that Poroshenko, the president of the Ukraine, said, I don't want you fired, it's Biden. He was right that the president of the Ukraine said, we have no evidence of your corruption whatsoever. So let's read what the audio is. I'll put the links for all of this so you can listen to yourself if you want, but I'll just read the transcript of the audio. Later in leaked audio on February 18, 2016, less than 3 months after the Kerry conversation, Poroshenko delivers some positive news. This is the president of the Ukraine talking to Joe Biden. Yesterday, I met with General Prosecutor Shokin, and despite the fact that we didn't have any corruption charges, we don't have any information about him doing something wrong. I specifically asked him, no, it was the day before yesterday, I asked him to resign his position as a state person. And despite of the fact that he has support in the power, and as I finished my meeting with him, he promised to give me the statement on resignation. And 1 hour ago, he brought me the written statement of resignation. This is my second step in keeping my promises. Biden replies, I agree. 4 weeks later, on March 22nd, 2016, Biden says, tell me that the new government and the new prosecutor, there's a new government and a new prosecutor general. I am prepared to do a public signing of the commitment for the $1 billion. So here we can see an acknowledgement from Biden that the Ukrainian president says we have no evidence of Shokin's corruption. We have no evidence that he did anything wrong. And even though he has support of the government of the Ukraine, Poroshenko is keeping his promise by asking Shokin to resign, which Biden is happy with. We also then have an acknowledgement from Biden. Yes, once this guy's out, we'll be able to send you the $1 billion. So all the people that said, oh, Biden was just exaggerating in his CFR speech that we all heard where Biden admitted the quid pro quo are wrong. Now, how does this tie into the testimony of Viktor Shokin? Viktor Shokin has claimed all along he was looking into Joe Biden's son, Hunter. He was looking into Zlochevsky, the corrupt oligarch that was at the head of this gas company, Burisma, and was Hunter Biden's boss. And he claimed that's the reason he was fired. Everyone said, oh, Shokin's a liar. He's lying about everything. He also claimed, Shokin claimed that he was never really fired. He was forced to resign. Even though the president didn't want him to, it was actually Vice President Biden that wanted him to resign. People said that was a lie. Well, we now see that that was correct. So let's go to the sworn testimony under perjury that Shokin gave. Part 6. And this is going to be lengthy, but it's all important. The circumstances of my dismissal that I tendered my resignation to the Rada at the request of President Poroshenko. Poroshenko asked me to resign due to pressure from the U.S. presidential administration, in particular from Joe Biden, who was the vice president. Biden was threatening to hold $1 billion in subsidies to the Ukraine until I was removed from office. After I yielded to the president's request and submitted my voluntary resignation, Poroshenko commented about it in the media. He said that I had carried out a colossal amount of work as general prosecutor, which is something none of my predecessors have been able to do, especially with regards to my working on reforming the different bodies of the prosecutor's office, on creating the specialized anti-corruption prosecutor's office, which enabled the NABU to conduct legal work on the creating self-governed prosecution and authorities. Skipping section 8. The truth is I was forced out because I was leading a wide-ranging corruption probe into Burisma Holdings, a natural gas firm active in Ukraine, and Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, was a member of the board of directors. I assume Burisma, which was connected with gas extraction, had the support of U.S. Vice President Joe Biden because his son was on the board of directors. On several occasions, President Poroshenko asked me to look at the criminal case against Burisma and consider the possibility of winding down the investigative actions in respect to this company, but I refused to close the investigation. Therefore, I was forced to leave office under direct and intense pressure from Joe Biden and the U.S. administration. In my conversations with Poroshenko at the time, he was emphatic that I should cease my investigations regarding Burisma. When I did not, he said that the U.S., via Biden, was refusing to release $1 billion promised to the Ukraine. He said he had no choice, therefore, to ask me to resign. So here we see that his story is confirmed, at least the part of him being asked to resign despite not having corruption, according to Ukrainian President Poroshenko. But he says that Poroshenko was repeatedly saying, look, it's because you're investigating Burisma, and it's because Joe Biden's son is on the board of directors. Joe Biden wants you to wind down this investigation. Now, we were told the exact opposite. We were told, oh no, Shokin was fired because he wasn't investigating Burisma, and he wasn't investigating Joe Biden's son. I told you on this channel that was nonsense from the get-go. Why in God's name would Biden or Obama, who claimed that Burisma was corrupt, who claimed that its founder Zlochevsky was corrupt and was an oligarch that was working on behalf of the pro-Russian former President Yanukovych, why in God's name would Joe Biden say, now I'm upset that you're not investigating my son's company hard enough? It made no sense from the get-go. Yet that's the story that we were told. We can now see that that wasn't true. If it's true that Shokin was telling the truth about being asked to resign by Poroshenko, that it was Biden's idea, that there was a quid pro quo for $1 billion, and that Poroshenko didn't have any corruption evidence against Shokin, then it stands to be true that the rest of this statement is most likely true as well. All the people wanted to write this statement off, the FBI people, the Biden people, the media. They said, oh, Shokin's a big liar. We can't trust anything he says. Yet his statement was correct with the released audio we now see of Biden. Let's see what else he says. When Poroshenko asked me to resign, the way he put it to me was that he was making it for the good of our country and that I should agree, also as an act of patriotism. I agreed on that basis. After my dismissal, Joe Biden made a public statement saying, even bragging, that he had me fired. That's the audio from the CFR that we all heard previous to this. This is when it became clear the real reason for my dismissal was my actions regarding in Burisma and Biden's personal interest in that company, which was demonstrated by the following. A, it was Biden's order in which that I be removed from office, not Poroshenko's. B, the reason was because it was precisely the state officials from the U.S. administration of Obama and Joe Biden in particular who were telling the heads of Ukraine law enforcement system how to investigate and whom to investigate, including members of the Yanukovych regime. I was not complying with their will in respects to Zlochevsky in particular, who's the guy that runs Burisma, who was a minister under Yanukovych, therefore I had to be removed from office. See, it was not Poroshenko being patriotic. It was Poroshenko submitting to the demands of state officials from the U.S. administration of President Obama for the reasons of political economy and the personal interest of U.S. Vice President Biden, amongst others. Now, this is a huge story. Look, I've been covering this. Go back and check out. Just search on YouTube, impeachment, search Ukraine under my channel, and you'll see all the videos I covered on this, which this is what I was saying from the get-go. I don't understand why the Republicans weren't making this simple case to defend Trump. If it's true that Biden offered a quid pro quo for personal benefit, in other words, to fire a prosecutor looking at his son, then an investigation is warranted. And we see that that's exactly what happened. The evidence has been ignored over and over by the mainstream media that are just propagandists for the deep state and for Democrats like Joe Biden, and so you won't hear this covered there. But I think this is a crucial aspect. I'm going to link Viktor Shokin's testimony so you can see him in his own words talking about how he was investigating Hunter Biden, he was investigating this company Burisma, and that's why he was fired. The released audio we have from Biden and the Ukrainian Poroshenko go to speak to that. Poroshenko specifically says, we don't have any evidence of corruption, but for some reason, Biden still wants him gone. So if that audio confirms a large portion of Shokin's testimony is true, then the burden is on others to prove that actually Shokin wasn't investigating Burisma and Biden, or Hunter Biden, as is being claimed. Also, if you go back and check out my videos, I show you proof that a month before he was forced out of office, Viktor Shokin actually froze the assets of Zlochevsky. Again, that's the guy who's running Burisma. That's the guy who's Hunter Biden's boss. So for Biden and everyone to say, oh, Shokin wasn't doing anything to investigate Burisma, that's just a lie, as both his testimony proves and the fact that he froze the assets of the leader of Burisma, Zlochevsky, also prove. This is part of the biggest scandal in the history of American politics. It goes right up there with the Obamagate stuff. Again, we see this isn't just Obama and Biden. Don't be mistaken. That's how they're going to try to spin it eventually. They're going to say, oh, well, even if this did happen, we don't think it did, but it's just, it's just a few low-level people that were in the Obama administration. It was the entire Democratic establishment that pushed for impeachment to stop Trump from investigating this obvious corruption that was occurring between Obama and Biden, offering a quid pro quo to fire a prosecutor that was looking at Biden's son. Hey, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. I'll be putting more videos out as the day goes on. I'll have a live stream today at 2:30 Eastern time that you can check out as well. So thank you so much, everyone. As always, have